Go ahead and call our meeting to order.
Move to set the agenda.
Second.
Nicely done.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right.
Good. Very good. First item on the agenda is the Charlotte Water presentation on wastewater treatment regionalization plan, Charlotte Water update, agenda memo.
All right.
Adrian, you look different today.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor, and members of council. Appreciate y'all having us. It's been a little while since we've been in front of you to talk about this project. And we certainly are back to give you an update on where things stand. Got some new news about the project, especially as it affects Belmont in this partnership. With me, what we're going to go through is an introductions, kind of the history of the project scope, the status, and then answer any questions that you have. As far as introductions, you'll remember the photos here when you're out at the site. It's looking a little different these days, but some of the members you met, for those of you that attended the tour, are here with us today. I'll start with our Director of Charlotte Water, Angela Charles, is with us. Nicole Bartlett is our project manager. She'll give you the bulk of this presentation. My name's Ron Hargrove. I'm one of the deputy directors helping with this project to get these stow-related projects completed. We also have our owner's advisor with HDR, Will Shull and Barry Sharon. They're helping us kind of coordinate the numerous amount of projects. They're doing some design on some of the access, but the design build, the joint venture projects for the stow and the Mount Holly and Charlotte related facilities, they're helping kind of with us look over those contracts and make sure that we're getting all the questions that we need to be asking and the answers to those questions. And then we have Lindsay Diaz with GHD. They're a new team member for this project, specifically for Belmont, and they will be doing the design of the facilities at your wastewater treatment plant. So we're welcoming them aboard, just recently selected with the assistance of Jerry Hatton on your staff. We think we made a good selection in that designer. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole, and I'll be back up if there's questions that I need to help with.
Sure. Thank you.
Especially the hard ones. Let's save those for later. Okay, so just touching on some of the objectives for the meeting today. We're first going to refresh all the attendees to each other. So Ron's already covered that for us, as well as our project team. We're going to provide an update to the council as far as the status and progress of the project, and then also look at recapping the stow project as a whole. So the very first thing we're going to touch on, I've mentioned a lot of project names that may not be familiar to everybody. So the first thing here is just defining what are all the different projects. So Stowe Regional Water Resource Recovery Facility is a new, what is historically known as a wastewater treatment plant. It will be owned and operated by Charlotte Water. It'll be located in western Mecklenburg County, just north of the Whitewater Center. And that is actually directly across the river, the Catawba River, from where Mount Holly's wastewater treatment plant is today. It will be a greenfield facility. That means there's nothing out there except for dirt and trees right now. It will be right next door to Long Creek Pump Station, which is one of our regional pump stations that's been in place out there for decades. The facility will serve western Mecklenburg County, so all of the flow that's coming down the Long Creek Basin today. And it will also serve eastern Gaston County, so that's going to be the city of Mount Holly and the city of Belmont. I'll touch on how all these projects are related in just a moment. So initially, Stowe will be rated to treat 15 million gallons per day. It is being designed so that we can easily expand the plant to 25 MGD in the future. There'll be some really nice graphics to look at here on later slides. But initially, Belmont's flow will go under the Catawba River over into Charlotte Water's collection system, and it will go to a pump station that's called Paul Creek Pump Station. For the near future, that flow goes down to McAlpine or Irwin, which are two other wastewater treatment plants in our system. But when Stowe is expanded to 25 MGD, we will flip the direction that Paul pumps, and all of the flow going to Paul Creek Pump Station, as well as the city of Belmont's flow, will go and be treated as Stowe. So eventually Stowe will treat Belmont's wastewater treatment, or wastewater flow as well. Belmont and Mount Holly both have a single wastewater treatment plant. Your wastewater treatment plant will be able to be decommissioned, so completely shut down. There will be a pump station that's constructed at the wastewater treatment plant, and the purpose of that pump station will be to send flow over into Charlotte Water's collection system for treatment. So we've got some really nice graphics about what that may look like later. Let's see. Oh, and then just as a note, Belmont would become what's termed a significant industrial user, so an SIU to Charlotte Water. Very similar thing happens at Mount Holly. They will be able to shut down their wastewater treatment plant. Some of the pipelines under the Catawba are being constructed now, and in fact, the first one was just pulled under the Catawba River in the last 2 or 3 weeks, which was pretty exciting. There are some other related projects that have to happen to make Stowe operational. So Ron earlier mentioned access roads. We're building a dedicated, basically a dedicated driveway, a dedicated access road and a bridge over Long Creek to access the Stowe facility. Stowe will not have solids handling. So at a wastewater treatment plant, what happens is the wastewater flow comes in, and it eventually separates into two separate streams. One is the cleaned water that goes back out into the environment, and the other is what's typically termed the solid stream, and that's all the things that are cleaned out of it. So Stowe will not have solids treatment. Instead, we're sending the flow down to a plant called McAlpine down in Pineville, where Charlotte Water is looking to regionalize solids treatment from a few of our facilities. And last but not least, we are planning on implementing a number of community benefit features around the Stowe project. We've had some really nice, mainly due to COVID, they've been virtual, but some really nice workshops to hear from the community, ask what they think is important about the area, and what they think might be missing. And so we've gotten some really great ideas from there to be able to build upon. All right. So all those projects are related. As we go through some of the history and the goals, I'm going to bring that all together for you guys. So what's the goal of the Stowe facility and some of those associated projects? So we're going to be able to meet our future wastewater needs. All of our communities have more and more people coming into it every day, more and more development. So this project will enhance and increase our wastewater treatment capacity. We'll be consolidating multiple wastewater facilities. So Mount Holly's wastewater treatment plant is going to shut down. Belmont's wastewater treatment plant is going to shut down. And we also purchased 90% of a private industrial partner's facility of their permit because they no longer operate as they once did, so they don't need it. So all those facilities will be consolidated into one state-of-the-art facility. We are looking to enhance our environmental practices.
Sorry, when you say we, who do you, yes, here I am. When you say we, who do you mean? Charlotte Water?
Sorry,
Who do you mean by we? When you say we are doing this, we are going to increase our capacity? All of us? Okay.
No,
Well, Charlotte Water. Okay. I'm just.
Yeah. It's a good thing, though. I don't know why. It's
okay.
A positive thing to take credit for, so I don't know.
I'm just, I don't know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but when people use words like we and they, I just like to make sure I understand who they're referring to.
Sure. Okay. Okay. So operating with more energy efficiency to reduce the carbon footprint. So right now, if someone were to flush a toilet at North Lake Mall, it would travel more than 20 miles before it's treated down in Pineville. So by being able to treat wastewater closer to the source that is generated, we are able to be more, Charlotte Water is able to be more energy efficient and reduce the associated carbon footprint. I mentioned some of the community benefit features. We'll be implementing a couple different community projects to be able to serve as a public amenity for some of the neighbors around the facility as well. Okay, so Belmont specific benefits. Decreasing the number of places where wastewater is discharged to the Catawba. That's a benefit for the region as a whole. Avoid making high-cost upgrades to the existing Belmont wastewater treatment plant. Reducing the cost of future wastewater treatment plant expansions or upgrades by taking advantage of inclusion of a larger regional facility. Eliminating the management of technical requirements to meet ever-tightening wastewater regulations, both now and into the future. And then being able to repurpose the current wastewater treatment plant property for city uses as you deem fit. Yeah. So I've touched on some. Why is the STOW project needed? To meet population growth and development. Back as far as the 1970s, there were various wastewater management and planning studies conducted that identified constructing a new regional facility in northwestern Mecklenburg County is going to be the best solution to meet the area's growing needs. So what was the problem, though? So in 1995, the state placed what is called a TMDL on Lake Wylie for nitrogen and phosphorus. And what that means in more basic terms is that no more point sources of nitrogen and phosphorus can be put into the Catawba River. So a wastewater treatment plant outfall would be considered a point source. So what was the solution? We collaborated with regional partners, and so that would include the city of Belmont, to gain their nutrient allocation. So with Mount Holly shutting down their plant, with Belmont shutting down their plant, all of that permit allocation will come to Charlotte Water's STOW permit, and same thing for 90% of that private industrial permit. So that was what is allowing us to put STOW and the associated discharge on the Catawba River. All right, so currently within Gaston County, Mount Holly and Belmont both discharge to the Catawba, and that private industry within Mecklenburg County discharges into the Catawba. Within phase 1 of the project, so this is again that initial build that's going to be 15 MGD. Mount Holly's flow is sent over to STOW, which processes flow that gets discharged into the Catawba River. What's also not pictured there, of course, is all the flow that's currently coming to Long Creek Pump Station today within Mecklenburg County, within our service district, would be processed there as well. Belmont's flow will initially go to Paul Creek Pump Station and be treated down at McAlpine, our McAlpine facility down in Pineville. When STOW is expanded to 25 MGD in the future, we will flip the direction where Paul Creek sends flow, and that flow will then be sent up to STOW. So once STOW is expanded, Belmont's flow will be treated at STOW as well. Okay, so just some important bits of the timeline, since this project does go so far back in history. So back in 2011, and I'm just going to focus on the ones on this timeline chart that just touch on Belmont. So back in 2011, the city of Charlotte and the city of Belmont entered into a memorandum of agreement. And then in 2019, that MOA was even more formalized and turned into an interlocal agreement. So both councils would have adopted that as well. Those are the two documents too that include the detailed agreement between the two cities, right? So for example, in this case, Belmont's permit being transferred to Charlotte Water, and temporarily Belmont is utilizing part of that 90% of the industrial permit that Charlotte Water purchased. Temporarily, Belmont's able to utilize some of that as well. All right, so this may be a touch hard to see, but the big green stars are what's important. STOW is up on the top right, just above the Whitewater Center there. Directly across the Catawba River is Mount Holly's wastewater treatment plant. Down south, the kind of blue-green there running through the middle of the screen is the Catawba River. A little bit further south is going to be Belmont's wastewater treatment plant. And off to the right, you can see Charlotte Water's Paul Creek pump station. So initially, all of Belmont's wastewater will be sent under the Catawba. There'll be a section of force main there to get it over to Paul Creek pump station. So team members, there's a lot of projects, there's a lot of companies, a lot of folks to coordinate. Charlotte Water's the owner for a lot of these contractual relationships, or all of them. HDR is our owner's advisor. We have a company by the name of Michael Baker International, who's providing independent cost estimating services. The design build team for the Stowe facility itself is Crowder Garney. They have formed a joint venture, and their engineer is Hazen. For the Mount Holly pump station and force main, as well as the headworks and influent pump station for Stowe, that design builder is Haskell, and the engineer is Black and Beach. Both of those projects are being completed under a project delivery method called progressive design build. Okay. Design bid build, which is more of the traditional process. Our access road and our bridge is being designed by HDR, and then they are being bid separately. So a company by the name of Blythe is building our bridge, and our north has not bid yet. CDM Smith is an engineering firm who's designing our solids pump station as well as the associated force mains. And then, as Ron mentioned, GHD was recently selected to be the design engineer for the Belmont pump station and force main project. These next slides are just to give you a visual representation of what some of the project areas are. So again, you can see the Catawba River, and everything in orange is making up what the Crowder Garney JV and Hazen are designing at the Stowe facility itself. Haskell is in charge of designing and building the Mount Holly pump station across the river, the pipelines that go underneath, and then some modifications to our Long Creek pump station to be able to have the capacity to accept Mount Holly's flow, and also the influent pump station and headworks building for Stowe, as well as some EQ basins you see. This is the dedicated access road that I've mentioned. Just the bridge right now is under construction. The roadway will be bidding soon. And then CDM Smith is doing the solids handling portion of the project. There'll be a pump station to pump the solids downstream to our McAlpine facility. And then what we're all here for, the Belmont pump station and force main. The visual that you're seeing here on the screen is from a preliminary engineering report. So it is a conceptual alignment. What you're seeing, there are 2 pipes that will go under the Catawba. They're there for liability. And then the rest of the force main to the Catawba, and then between the Catawba and Paul Creek would just be a single pipe. Yep. Okay, so what I wanted to touch on here, there's some clips there at the top about, they come from the interlocal agreement. So what it is explaining, the green is what's termed the Belmont component. It means the portion of the project that the city of Belmont is funding. It just includes the infrastructure at the wastewater treatment plant itself. And Belmont has applied and received approval for getting an SRF loan. And then the Charlotte component is the entirety of the pipeline, even that which is on the plant itself. All right, so project status. I mentioned that SRF loan. It's been submitted and approved. The engineering report was submitted around the beginning of September. It's currently under review. As a part of the SRF funding approval, there are a couple of milestones that we're required to meet. So the pump station portion of the project is what will have SRF funding, and that is what will have to meet all of those dates within red there. We recently procured, we've selected GHD as our design engineer. The next step there is to take their scope and feed it to City of Charlotte Council, and then we will work on production of design and construction documents as well as getting permitting. All right, so this came from GHD's SOQ. It's again just a concept at this point, but I really like the graphic. It shows some examples of where the pump station may be able to be located and how we can utilize some of that existing infrastructure to save some overall project costs. So I thought that was neat. This, again, is just some conceptual ideas from GHD's SOQ. I thought they were important to show here because they had some really neat ideas that, again, may be able to save us some pretty substantial money. So some ideas were asking permission not to cross the Catawba at a 90-degree angle. So we'll be pursuing those and a couple of other concepts they have bubbled there during detailed design and permitting. Questions?
Where is the Pump Creek pump station located?
Off Old Dowd Road.
Old Dowd Road?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's the distance of that from the Belmont pump station?
I'm not sure I know that one offhand. 13,000 feet.
13,000 feet.
Mm-hmm. 2.5 miles.
This, I think, would be more for Kevin. Would the individuals employed at the wastewater treatment plant move over and work at the new pump station in Force Main?
Several of the employees, of course, we would need to, of course, keep because of stations. But I believe there was sort of an agreement that they would probably consider taking them to Force Main.
Yeah. Well, so the Belmont, I should have mentioned this too. The Belmont pump station in Force Main will be owned and operated by Charlotte Water. But part of the interlocal agreement was that, of course, nobody has to come work for Charlotte Water. I like working there, but of course, if, nobody would be forced to. But it does say if any of the Belmont wastewater treatment plant employees would like to, we would try to find them a position where we could within Charlotte Water too.
So the pump station that you're talking about, Force Main, is that on our side?
Yes.
Okay, so that was in green, I believe, and that's the portion we're paying for?
Yes.
But you own it?
Yes.
How did that come about? I mean, that just seems counterintuitive to me. We're paying for it, but you own it.
So part of the agreement when we were negotiating that, we offered the town what kind of their wishes was to either own and operate the pump station or for Charlotte Water to do that. And so at the time, the town elected to allow Charlotte Water to own and operate facilities. Right. You keep your plant property.
Yeah.
We may use some of the existing infrastructure on the plant site, some of the basins and tankage and that kind of thing. The buildings and the outlying structures are all town property to use how you would like to. But the agreement set up that the town had a max capital contribution to pay for the pump station, and that's all the town's investment is into it. Mm-hmm. And then it's Charlotte Water's responsibility to own and operate it from there on. And
was that laid out in the interlocal agreement that was previously approved?
Yeah, that was.
In 2019?
That's correct.
And does Mount Holly have a similar arrangement?
Exactly the same.
All right.
Now, the only exception, Mount Holly pays for one of the force mains to get it to the Stoke facility. You avoid that cost in this agreement. Charlotte owns all the force mains on the Gaston side as well as under the river on the Mecklenburg side, and are funding that.
And then Charlotte Water would be responsible for any maintenance and servicing or anything like that. guess the question directed, you're not going to come to the city of Belmont and say, hey, we need additional monies to fund a fix or something like that. Is that correct?
Once the project's built, no, sir. You're paying a rate for the treatment cost, and you're actually getting a treatment-only rate. We're only looking at our budgets to treat the wastewater at our facility, and that's the rate that you're paying. So it's a more better deal for the town.
So, and then on to that rate, I guess, so how is that calculated? Is it fixed for a duration and then reeval based off of operating costs, or is it variable based off of the operating costs?
It varies based on our operating costs. Whatever our budgeting is for the year, there's a calculation that would determine what that rate would be.
And just, sorry, one more. And I'm assuming, and this is kind of gets directed to Kevin and Bill, when we did the analysis, because again, obviously I wasn't here when this was reviewed, did we come to the conclusion that the variable rate would be significantly lower on the other side as opposed to us continuing to do it ourselves?
Before our time, what I was saying.
Cost us a fortune. On my. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions?
How long are those rates good for? I thought we were locked in for a period of time at a certain rate. Is that correct?
The agreement's pretty much a perpetual agreement. There's no term limitation. The rates will change each year according to our budget for the treatment facilities. The agreement sets up that Belmont has the initial rate is set up on a 3 million gallon a day capacity, and you have the ability to expand that to 5 upon future expansions of the facility. The treatment only rate applies to the first 3 million gallons. So if there's a lot of flow, if your monthly averages go above 3, then you'll pay the retail rate that we charge customers in Charlotte. But that kind of is the way that you look at your system, you look at your build out, you look at your growth, and you determine when you need a capacity expansion. But we've got that built into the agreement to allow for you to get up to 2 million gallons extra, which is what your current permitted capacity is.
Bill, do you know what our current monthly, or Kevin, what our current monthly? Yeah.
It's below 2.
Below 2? Okay. Gotcha.
Sometimes it'll go during rain events, certain times of the year, it'll go above 2, but it sticks around that.
Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies,
You're welcome. Thank you
for addressing the issue with us. Yeah. And if we built a plant ourselves, it would cost a lot of money.
Well, you can say the stove facility, there was a $300 million price tag. It's 15 million gallons a day, so it's about $20.
Yep. Yep. Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is discussion of affordable housing in Belmont.
That agenda item was added today. It didn't go out in your agenda that was published this weekend. Forgot to put that on there. So
Thank you.
I was told that you two would be able to handle that.
What's that?
The affordable housing. I believe it was you two that were going to handle it, or was
Adrian had mentioned something about having a discussion about the things we sat in at the league conference.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Well, I think
That's right, okay.
also I think we had discussed at the previous meeting that we wanted to do some inventory of city property that might be utilized for affordable housing, such as the lots. What was it on? That-
Yeah, I forget the name of that
Deaton
street.
Drive?
Dees Drive.
Yes.
And we said, well, what's our total inventory? So I think
Yeah.
we'd like that done at some
An
point.
inventory of city property.
Yeah, that might be utilized because there were some logistical issues with the
It had
Dees
the
Drive.
sloping issue, right?
Well, not just there was a property access.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Was that ever resolved?
did we attempt to resolve it?
I believe that was a conversation with Ms. Phoenix.
Yes.
Well, if not, we need to have that conversation with her so we can open up that property.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think hers was the one that was blocking access to, I forget whatever road was there.
Because if I remember correctly, there was a cul-de-sac, right, where I believe you knew and he wanted to purchase X amount of land, but then there was another option which went through Ms. Feemster's property to access the land. Okay. Sorry,
Because
I'm
we
just
were
trying to-
like, we don't have to. It was a private,
right.
and we said, well, we don't necessarily have to sell it to that private individual, but
Right.
hey, I don't know if it was Mark or Adrian or whoever had the original idea. Well, we could use those lots because there's more lots in there than just the two in question. But while the one or two of those might have had access to the edge of the cul-de-sac on the other street, the remainder would have had to go through the property that's owned by Ms. Feemster. And so to make it work, we'd have to figure something out in that regard. Does that sound right?
We need that property.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, it's been a while since we were at that conference, but I mean, there were other options that municipalities were looking at: land trust, land banks, adaptive reuse, something like the middle school. They had taken buildings like that, and the city had gone out for loans. I think Durham was one of the cities that had done that.
Yeah, they did like an affordable housing bond and threw a whole bunch of money at several different projects. Obviously, they're a big city with, a little more
Deeper
resources than we have,
pockets.
but
But across the board, all cities of every level are looking at this and trying to get creative for affordable housing.
yeah, well, they said that the easiest, well, I guess the route that involves the fewest entanglements with various laws and regulations and stuff is trying to do this on property that the local government already owns or could own, acquire, right? So that was why they had suggested doing an inventory as kind of the first step, was because, I mean, we've got lots all over the city that are not being used for anything. Not necessarily saying that all of them are suitable for housing, but odds are some of them are.
It would be nice to know because I think we had said that was a more, while Dixon Village will be nice, it's up in the about as far north as you can go in Belmont, and it would be nice to have some units that were more centrally located.
Well, some of the towns also were trying to get creative in land and property acquisition, buildings, primarily focused on condemned and distressed properties to build up their land holdings for future development. So I don't know if we would be interested in that, but it was interesting. They're looking at a lot of varied options to try to resolve this. Because I mean, Duke said they're having a problem with their staff and other people who work. Durham, not Duke. The people who work in the community have to live so far out of the community. So there was a lot of what was driving them to get involved in this. But I agree, inventory is the best place to start.
So I guess that would be our.
We can do that very easily.
Okay. And corollary to that, explore the one on Dees Drive with the property owner there. if we need to revisit those notes or whatever, but you all know what we're beat and drive, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Next item on the agenda is City Hall renovation design services firm selection process.
Great, yeah, so at the last meeting, I gave you the responses to the RFQ, and if you've had time to look through those, if you all can reach consensus on your top three, that would be fantastic. And it's your choice of how many folks you would like to bring in and interview for this project. I think 3 probably should be sufficient.
I think the top 3.
Yeah.
Well, I thought 2 were pretty head and shoulders in terms of experience with City Hall renovations. And then I'd be open to who the third was, but for me, CPL and Creech had the most experience doing City Hall, like doing the type of project this would entail.
Okay.
And of course, we know CPL from the rec center, and as far as I know, have been very happy with their work.
So CPL and Creech were also one of my 2, or 2 of my 3. And then I also, just to throw this out there, I also had Health Design as a third potential option.
Okay.
Well, I also had Creech, CPL. I had Morrisburg and Helt also.
I was more enthusiastic about Morrisburg than I was about Helt.
And Mark.
Yes, I'm just going through my notes here. I had Creech and CPL. The third one was a little bit more ambiguous. There were the remaining, what is this, 5? All had various strengths that I think the other ones didn't. Morrisburg seemed, they definitely seemed to want it. And also seem to have a lot of local Belmont people involved with their firm, which is kind of a nice plus. The only hesitation I had about them was they didn't seem to have a whole lot of experience with town halls in particular. But it was kind of between them and, well, Helt was good too, but they also didn't really seem to have a whole lot of town hall experience either. Not to say they couldn't do it, but, you know, I mean, I think Creech and CPL, they've got a whole portfolio here. Yeah, so I guess that's not really an answer as far as the third
Well,
one.
I like
For sure, Creech and CPL.
Yeah.
I guess we could put
Morris.
Let me,
Oh.
Were 1 Health Design, 2 CPL, and then she kind of said the rest
Yeah.
fell all together.
Yeah.
So for sure, CPL. Did you say CPL?
Yeah, I had CPL and Creech, which, I mean, if we've got 2 that everybody likes, it might save us some time.
well, let me ask you this. I mean, if you're weighting them primarily on their City Hall work, and I didn't look that deep into this, but the renovations for City Hall look like they were going back to be City Halls. I think we've yet to determine we're going to select a company because they've done a lot of work to make an old City Hall a new City Hall. But I don't know that we've really decided yet. That doesn't seem to be clear if that's the direction we're going or if it's going to be something else. So, you know, weighting them in that matter might not be the best option from where I sit. I mean, this might be adaptive reuse for something other than City Hall. And then in that lens, is that their specialty? That's just a thought.
You know, the thing is they can always change these bids that they have, but I think the top 3 would be a suggestion that I would make.
What were the
Just
top
to be
3?
safe.
Did you give me yours?
No, I didn't give it to you. The ones they mentioned.
was kind of, there's
Yeah.
4 in the running. The Health, CPL, Creech, and Morrisburg.
Right.
4 that you guys have all mentioned.
Yeah.
I had Morrisburg third. I had Stuart Cooper Newell fourth, like very close, because it seemed like they had a little bit more experience with like town hall type things, but
It's their wheelhouse.
like I was a little bit less excited about their proposals. They just didn't. There wasn't the enthusiasm that Morrisburg had and the local connections, so that's why I rated Morrisburg a little bit higher. I just didn't think Helt had the sort of breadth of experience in terms of the depth of the teams that they were going to bring to bear that some of the other bidders did, in terms of like who was going to be available and what all their experiences were. But
I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, I'm willing to put Helt aside. I mean, again, I think I agree with the mayor. I mean, I think just picking three would probably be best suited. Just
well,
So CPL,
I had them as number one, CPL.
Creech.
Reach was another
I
one.
mean, I'm
Was-
open to, if we want to do
and
four, I'm open to four.
What was
but-
the third one? Was it going to be Morris?
Morrisburg.
Well, I would say one thing I like about Helt is that they've done a lot of work here locally.
Mhm.
That's what I looked at with the Sammys in Dallas, the Piedmont Lithium Building,
And Martha had them high, so I'm happy
the
to.
trolley barn as well.
Yeah.
Helt. So maybe we do keep them because I had them ranked I had them ranked 3 on my
You
list.
can interview 4.
Yes.
Well,
That's
let's
what
do
I'm
4.
thinking we
Yeah,
should.
let's do 4.
Let's just do four.
Okay.
Doesn't hurt. If you stay over 4, maybe you get food too that day. It's always a plus.
Let's shoot for 5.
Yeah. Let's just bring them all in. Let's find more people off the street to bring in.
Let's bring in a buffet.
That's right.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks for that direction. We'll get
Thank you.
those scheduled for you. We'll get in touch with you on some dates.
Very good.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
When can I just ask one question? When would we discuss what the vision is? It during the interview process? What the vision is collectively, as we as a council want to see?
You definitely can. One thing though that we did include or make them include is a public engagement process.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I think during that time, you'll be able to hear from the public and you all will get to talk, brainstorm. They'll go through brainstorming activities, and I think that's where
No, that would be
we're going
great.
to do that.
Well, let me ask a question then, because your question reminded me of something. Just in terms of, and we touched on this at the last meeting, I hesitate to delve back into those waters, but in terms of costs, like we know the situation with the audits and the loans and everything, what are we looking at in terms of costs in the near future? Because I think we'd be sort of hesitant to spend, I mean, if it's something that we need a loan for, that's sort of problematic at this point. So like what are realistic expenses associated with this endeavor up until the time that we're anticipating rectifying the audit situation and having the LGC happy with us and open for loans?
It should just be a negotiated contract for the design services. There might be some engineering that would have to take place if they need to get in there and structurally and see some things. But I don't think it's going to be a cost that we couldn't absorb in just in a normal fiscal year.
Okay. Like what I mean, I don't want to.
Just want you to put a finer point on the dollar amount, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent you can. I'm not saying like $7,692.47, but like what would be?
Where do we get
In
the
the
vision?
$30,000 range.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just.
Yeah.
In the
See, that's what I was under the impression. This is just bringing them to the table and then we discuss, because we have to start this process.
But I'm assuming we're going to
Decided.
start it before March, which is when I've been told everything's going to be rectified with the
we
LGC.
would start, we'd finance this.
Not that we'd finance it, but that we'd like have selected someone and would be. I mean, is that unrealistic? What are we talking about in terms of a timeline?
The timeline's totally up to you. We can go through the design process and have, schematic designs, have a plan for the future, and you don't have to go into construction until you're ready budget-wise, and that can sit there.
And I think that's.
Well, let me ask you, I mean, as part of their process, I'm assuming the first thing they would do is have a structural engineer go in there and look at it, and before they start scheming anything out, they would know limitations of the building as it sits.
Yes, I think that would be the
Well,
first
like
thing
some
to
of them
do.
got like scan equipment and they can do like digital
Yeah.
3D stuff and like
Yeah.
goggles.
Sometimes they have to maybe punch a hole in the wall to see what's behind there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the timeline doesn't bother me. That building has stood as is for decades, so shortening or lengthening out either
Okay.
direction, I don't have a problem with.
I just want to make sure, because we're being especially sensitive to those types of things the next few months, that we're all on the same page in terms of any potential costs.
Right, and you're just coming up with the plan right now. It's not going into construction
Right.
drawings.
Well, we're gonna
and
get a
this-
grant to help with that too.
That is something that is coming up on the agenda later. Is number 4. It's about a grant. I believe it's for City Hall.
That might be a good segue.
It's a good segue.
Let's segue right over to that.
Cassidy? That's number 4 on our agenda to talk about the Rural Transformation Grant. And we always like to bring those to you anytime before we apply for a grant, especially to talk if there's any matching funds.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope you'll excuse me, I'm here in lieu of Phil a little bit unexpectedly, so this may be more of a reading than a presentation.
Dramatic reading.
Yes, I can do that too. You guys have the guidelines in your agenda packets for the grant. Those are very extensive. I don't know if you take the time to read them or not. So some of this is background on the grant that may be a little redundant. But back in 2021, the Appropriation Committee from the state legislature allocated $50 million of their ARPA funds to the Department of Commerce for their Rural Economic Development Division to administer a new rural transformation grant program. That $50 million provides grant resources to local governments to help build rural communities and help them revitalize Main Street and downtown districts, advance initiatives that build local capacity, revitalize and strengthen neighborhoods, foster small business recovery and sustainability, and support economic growth. The grants are being awarded under 4 different categories: downtown revitalization, resilient neighborhoods, community enhancement for economic growth, and rural community capacity building. The major eligibility requirement is that the community fall in a Tier 1 or Tier 2 county, and Gaston County is designated as a Tier 2 county. The other major part of the requirements are that the local government must own or be purchasing the property of which they would apply those grant funds to. So far in round 1 of the grant cycle, they've awarded $21 million, which was handed out in June of 2022. The second grant cycle is the current period that we're in. It opens September 1st and will close November 1st. Those awards would then be announced December 16th is the current timeline. And then the maximum award per applicant is $950,000. So we would like to, and I say we as Community Development Department staff, apply for this grant for the City Hall renovations.
Are there matching funds required?
No,
No.
Is this
not that I've read, so.
Okay.
Because
take
this
it
is
with grains of
pulled from just like the American Rescue Plan, some of the government or federal funding, I guess, that trickled down to the state?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Go ahead. Well, I assume there'd be costs in connection with preparing the application.
They do allow for some administrative costs. Those are outlined in those guidelines.
Right. That would be recouped from the grant.
Yes.
Okay.
$3,500, I think.
Okay. And would we? I remember in connection with some other grants, we actually hired somebody to do some stuff. Would that be anticipated here?
Were we writing this in-house?
Unless it came, it's a very extensive application.
Mm.
So I imagine we need to rely heavily on information from the administrative department. I don't know if it would come to that, but being the magnitude that it is, I wouldn't rule out that that's something Bill has in mind.
Gotta cross the T's and dot the I's, huh?
Steve, is that Cold Stone Steve Austin? His name is Steve Austin.
Oh, I remember.
I go by
him.
Stone Cold for him.
Okay, so it's been my experience. Now, I scanned the agreement. My laptop's not working, and I was trying to read from this, which is really problematic. Every time somebody's offered me something for free, a grant is basically free money, although it just means somebody else that money's being called from other people to give to you. there's always a catch. Now, I mean, I guess you guys have gone over this. Whenever someone offers me free money, that's the first thing I said, okay, where's the catch on this? Because there usually is one. Have you guys, are we being constrained, restrained, required? Is there anything in here that's kind of positioning us or putting a, driving us in any way? Or is this just, here's the money, these are your relatively loose parameters?
Are you saying like limitations on what we can do with the
Anything.
building?
Well, I mean, I think
Anything
there
on there, because I want to make sure we take a very good look at those.
there's some, like, it's subject to their review and audit, I think, to make sure we're making sufficient progress. So I know, like, they can come in and, like, review records and stuff, if I'm remembering correctly.
Well, especially since it's the ARPA funding, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's certain
And, like,
ways
it has
you
to be
can
done
commit
within
that.
a certain period of time. Like, it,
correct.
I forget what the,
Because just like with
Data,
ours, we
but,
have
you
X
know.
amount of time to spend it. And then it's,
All right, so I mean, in a nutshell, there would be nothing in it that could not be described as maybe usual and customary.
Not that I've read, but I've not quite read it in as much detail as Phil has, and he attended a webinar a few months ago.
Okay.
My only understanding is the public use and being public-owned property, but I didn't see anything outside of that.
when is it due again?
November 1st.
November 1st.
And,
Somewhat of a
When you
tight
say-
timeline.
When you say public use, again, we've not yet decided what we want to do. So if we decide to go with, say, a welcome center or something like that, that would qualify. But if we swing back, council should decide we want to make that our chambers. Each one of those would be a qualifying use, as far as you know.
I maybe shouldn't have said use, but publicly owned. The city must own the property.
Okay.
I didn't get into the details about specific uses beyond that. I don't know that it was mentioned.
I would like to know that. I mean, because we have yet to decide.
It's one of the first, I didn't bring my
I left mine on my
thing,
desk,
but
but
it's one
yeah,
of
it
the first
details those
bullet points, I
definitions.
feel. Public improvements. I think it was this one. Improvements to yes, it's improvements to publicly owned buildings for
Right.
community-wide use, lots, alleys, streetscapes, parking facilities, restrooms, so forth. That disproportionate public or private negative economic impacts from the pandemic in a downtown qualified census tract. So I'm assuming we're okay in that census tract. That's probably been checked. But it just says improvements to publicly owned buildings for community use.
Okay.
Most of
pretty
them are
broad.
pretty
Yeah.
wide,
Well,
open
they-
to interpretation.
Because the federal government, if we remember in the budget, they redefined how you could use ARPA funding as a lot more broad in its context. Now, obviously, certain things you still can't do, but they did broaden it.
Yeah, well, their description here of public improvement seems pretty broad.
Yeah.
I'd say the only real limiting factor on that appears to be publicly owned. So as long as we own it.
I think they said we do own it, right? We have the deed to it and everything.
We're doing a title search. Yep.
That was part of, that was the post office, it was declared surplus property and sold to city owners.
I think we'll be pretty safe if we go with this.
And I mean, I don't, Mark, did you see anything that troubled you? I mean, it just seemed like, in terms of any strings or like
No,
what?
yeah, I went through it looking specifically for that. There was nothing in here that really set off any alarm bells as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
It just seemed like administrative stuff, or if they're giving us the money, they kind of want to make sure that, you know.
Yeah, the usual, like, I mean, there's some stuff up the top here about U.S. Treasury guidance and that kind of thing, but it's all tied to, like, audit functions and that sort of stuff, so, I think with the direction that we're thinking about going with this, I think would be, at least my, non-technical legal reading of this.
So
Uncle Sam is a good uncle.
Well, I don't know that I'd go that far, but
So if we submit this in November, did it say when we would anticipate to hear back?
December 16th.
December 16th. So if we received it December 16th, I guess how long could we sit on that? Because again, we also do want to talk about timing with the audit, right? So we're
I think
saying
it's just the overall project needs to be done.
Typically, you get 3 to 5 years on the grant of this size, right?
Yeah, I think
On
so.
I thought
implementation.
it said somewhere in there how long.
Which is about our other ARPA restriction timeline.
Yeah.
I think it was 2 years.
Was it
our
2?
fee.
Just
I
take-
thought
shouldn't take
it was
that
in
long
months. It was
They wanted
like,
to get that money spent. That's why
Yeah,
it was
they
so
were-
short.
Right.
Yeah.
It shouldn't take that long anyway to get it done.
As long as we have like flexible on that, it's not like a year's timeline or so. Because to Jim's point too, we do want to make sure
Yeah.
we can
So you're looking
do this.
to us for authorization to go out and apply for the grant.
Correct.
If you require a motion, I would motion to go out and apply for that grant.
Second.
Do I hear a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Cassidy, for your hard work. And Morgan too. I want to leave her out. All right, next item on the agenda is approval of an ordinance authorizing the sale, possession, and consumption of alcoholic beverages for the 2022 Movies in the Park series.
Hello, everyone.
Hey,
There we
gotta
go.
lower that a little
Thanks.
bit.
All right. The Community Development Department has the opportunity to reintroduce Movies in the Park. Select nights, October through December. We will be partnering with Aurora Starlit Cinema. This organization provides the screen, sound, setup. They also bring in arcade games and concessions. As part of the concessions, they would also like to sell alcohol. So that's what we are here requesting today, authorization to sell, possession, and consumption of alcoholic beverages for the Movies in the Park series.
What movies, like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Showgirls?
These are all PG or G rated
oh my
movies.
God.
Very appropriate.
Jim,
They are all
you got to come at 11 p.m. for those.
they're posted on the city website, but I have the list right here if you'd like to know.
Oh, I'm dying to know.
We've got Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Hocus Pocus, The Nightmare Before Christmas, The Polar Express, Elf, and How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Good family movies.
Yeah.
Family-friendly movies.
Mo- Motion to approve.
All in favor, say aye.
Unless, do you have
Well,
another-
I noticed that some of them are in December and like the Friday after Thanksgiving. Do you think it might be too cold, or has that been done in the past?
They've done Christmas ones in the past, haven't they?
I would have to refer to Cassie.
Yeah.
All right.
Bring a blanket.
Or you can warm up with.
Maybe if it was like.
Oh yeah, your fiance.
I mean, maybe it was like Columbo or something. You made a motion. I'm sorry.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Morgan. Appreciate that. Okay.
Great, Columbo.
That it?
Is that it?
And then just the farmers market is this Thursday, correct?
The first Thursday night pop is
This Thursday. So farmers market and then the concert in the park complex.
and during, and then it goes into the concert. Farmers market starts at 2:30, and the Thursday night pop concert starts at 6 p.m.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then the next week is an art. Next week is Thursday night pops as well, and the Gaston County Art Sale will be hosted an affordable art sale in conjunction with Thursday night pops.
I just want to tell you how much I appreciate what you guys do with the downtown. Got great programs. Good.
Let me pass along one thing that Adrian sent me an email today. The Catawba River Keepers, they have a new location, or they're moving to a new location. It's in McCaddenville. We'll send you an email. There is a registration link. September the 22nd from 5 to 7:30. They'll have an informal, like an open house, and they'll have some food and drinks and little presentation. So mark that down if you want to visit them.
Which is also the night of the Habitat
It is
function.
the. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
So There's a choice to be made.
And actually, I think the MPO is having a public forum that night as well.
Yeah.
So there's 3 choices to be picked from.
The 22nd.
I thought the Habitat thing was October 22nd. Maybe I'm wrong.
Is it?
I got two
Maybe I'm
great
wrong.
grandsons born
One
on
of
the
us-
same
one of
day,
us is wrong.
Yeah.
September 22nd.
Well, happy early birthday to him,
Maybe I'm wrong.
Whose birthday?
Yeah.
his grandsons.
Oh, happy birthday.
All right. I got a birthday coming up on the 24th.
You do?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Correct. The hard hat and high heels for Habitat Community is on Saturday, October 20th.
So 2. I do know the MPO is that night because
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
You're the member.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Look at that, Kevin. You got us out.